Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are doing something a little different today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, usually we take one topic, the history of coffee or the future of AI, and just drill all the way down. But today, we're tackling what I'm calling the adulting trifecta.
The trifecta, that sounds a little ominous.
It feels ominous.
Yeah.
It's that three-front war that I think every single person listening is probably fighting.
Okay, lay it on me.
So, front one. You're trying to build actual wealth, right? So you're not a 90-year-old retail greeter. Front two, you're trying to raise kids who aren't, financial disasters.
A noble goal.
And front three, you are just trying to keep your own brain from melting down in a world that is practically designed to distract you every 3 seconds.
It is exhausting just hearing you list them. But you're so right. We always treat these as like separate problems.
Yeah, okay.
You've got your investment strategy in this box, your parenting philosophy way over there, and then maybe some self-care hacks sprinkled on top when you have a spare minute.
Right. But we've got a stack of research today that argues these are not separate problems at all. They're actually the same problem.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are the sources?
We're looking at stock market savings, fortune-building secrets revealed for the money side, kids' finance culture for the parenting angle, and then stop living for others. Monk mode for the mindset piece.
And the mission for this deep dive is to show how it all connects. Because when you layer these together, you start to see that financial discipline and mental discipline, they're basically the same muscle.
So let's start with the wallet. I think for most people listening, and definitely for me, there's this sort of lingering anxiety. You have the job, you pay the bills,
Yeah.
you maybe sock away a little cash in a standard bank account, you feel responsible. But our first source, stock market savings, it opens with a pretty brutal reality check.
It does. It basically calls that responsible saver a loser.
Which is harsh.
It is a harsh truth, but it's a necessary one. The source uses this really vivid image of rowing a boat upstream. If you're keeping your wealth in a traditional savings account, you might be paddling really hardworking extra hours, cutting coupons, being frugal, but the current is just
Pushing you backward.
pushing you backward faster than you can row.
And that current is inflation.
Right. And we hear that word on the news all the time, but I don't think we really feel it, Not until you look at the math. The source calls it the silent thief.
The silent thief, I like that.
If inflation is at, say, 3% or 4%, and your bank is giving you a super generous 0.5% interest, your money is literally dying.
It's losing value every single day.
It buys less groceries, less gas, less house, every single year. You are guaranteed to lose.
So the core argument here is that saving is defensive. It's just trying to hold on to what you have, and you're failing even at that.
Exactly. Saving preserves capital, and it does it poorly. Investing actually grows it. You have to switch from the passenger seat to the driver's seat. But, and this is the huge hurdle the book identifies, most people are terrified of the driver's seat.
Because they think the stock market is a casino. Well, isn't it? I mean, we see the movies, people are screaming at monitors, they're buying high, selling low, losing their life savings on some hunch. It feels like gambling.
And that is the misconception that keeps people poor. The source draws a really hard line here. Gambling is throwing darts at a board. It's all luck and adrenaline.
Okay.
Investing, at least the kind this book is talking about, is about data and long-term horizons. If you're trying to guess which stock is going to double by Tuesday, yes, you're gambling. You might as well just go to Vegas.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Not at all.
So how do we invest without the heart palpitations? Because even if I know I should be in the market, when I see a 10% drop, my gut instinct is to pull everything out and stuff it under the mattress.
That is the monkey mind taking over, which we will definitely get to later. But tactically, the source offers a solution for that exact feeling. It's called dollar cost averaging, or DCA.
Okay, let's unpack that. No jargon. How does it actually work?
Think of it like tending a garden. If you're growing vegetables, you don't only water them on the sunny days, right?
Right.
You water them on a schedule. DCA is the financial version of that. You just commit to investing a fixed amount, say $500 on the first of every month. It doesn't matter if the market is up, down, or sideways. You just water the garden.
But wait, if the market is crashing, isn't that just throwing good money after bad? If I see the graph going straight down, why on earth would I buy more?
That is the intuition trap. The math proves the total opposite. When the market is down, share prices are lower.
Okay.
So your fixed $500 actually buys more shares. You are automatically buying the dip. You're getting more ownership for the exact same price.
You're buying high-quality assets when they're on sale.
Precisely. And when the market recovers, and historically broad markets always have over time, you now have a much larger pile of shares riding that wave all the way up. It takes the emotion completely out of it.
Okay, so we have the how DCA. But what are we buying? Because picking stocks feels like a full-time job. I do not have time to read balance sheets.
And you shouldn't. The research in stock market savings is very, very skeptical of individual stock picking for the average person. It pushes heavily for ETFs, exchange-traded funds.
I always hear that acronym. Explain it like I'm 5.
Okay, so imagine you go to the grocery store. You could try to pick the single best apple, right? Hoping it's not secretly rotten on the inside. That takes a lot of time and skill.
And I'd probably pick the rotten one.
Or you could just buy the whole fruit basket. An ETF is the basket. It holds hundreds, sometimes thousands, of different companies.
So if one company goes bust-like, the next Enron is in there, it doesn't completely wipe you out.
Right, because you still have 499 other companies holding up the value. It's instant diversification. And the best part, which the source really hammers home, is the cost.
The fees.
The fees, yes. If you hire some guy in a suit, an active fund manager, to pick stocks for you, he charges you a hefty fee. He gets paid whether he makes you money or loses it.
Ouch.
But ETFs are largely automated, so the fees are tiny. You keep more of your own money compounding for yourself.
There was a story in the book that I really loved. Sarah, because usually financial books talk about some tech bro who invented an app and made billions. Sarah wasn't that.
No, Sarah is the hero of this book because she's so relatable. She never made a massive salary. She wasn't a hedge fund genius. She just started in her early 20s, bought boring old ETFs, and reinvested her dividends.
Reinvesting dividends, that's the DREP concept.
Dividend reinvestment plan. It just means when a company pays you a little profit, you don't spend it on pizza. You use it to automatically buy more shares of that company. It's the snowball effect.
And Sarah just let that snowball roll for 40 years.
And by the time she retired, she was wealthy. Not because she was a genius, but because she was just incredibly consistent.
That story always stings a little bit, though, doesn't it?
It does.
Because you hear started in her 20s and you just...
Yeah.
You look at the calendar and think, well, shoot, I missed that boat.
Yeah. That's a tough one. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. But you're right, that feeling of regret, it's actually a really powerful pivot point.
A pivot to what?
To our second source, actually. Kids' finance culture. We might have started late, but we have a real chance to make sure our kids don't make that same mistake.
Right. This source shifts from repairing our situation to preparing the next generation. And it hits you right away with that tale of two sabers, Emily and David.
Yeah. This one is a mind bender. It illustrates the one asset kids have that we just don't anymore. Time.
So run us through the scenario.
Okay, so Emily starts investing at age 19. She puts away, let's say, $2,000 a year. She does this for about 8 years, and then she stops. Completely.
She just stops at 27?
Stops completely, never invests another dime. She just lets that initial pot of money sit there and grow. Now you've got David.
And David is like most of us. He waits.
He waits. He starts investing at age 30. He puts in the same amount, $2,000 a year, but he does it every single year until he's 65.
So David is saving for 35 years. Emily only saved for 8. David must have way, way more money.
You would think so. But depending on the interest rate model you use, Emily actually ends up with more money, or at least a very comparable amount.
Right.
Even though she put in a tiny fraction of the capital.
That feels like it's illegal. The math feels broken.
It's the exponential nature of compounding. Emily's money had 40-plus years to just duplicate itself over and over. David's money had much less time. That is the gift we're trying to give our children.
So not just cash, but the habit of starting the clock early.
Exactly.
But here's the practical problem. You can't sit a 7-year-old down and explain exponential growth curves. Their eyes just glaze over. They want a Lego set. How do we make this tangible?
The source suggests frameworks, not lectures. The 50-30-20 rule is a fantastic starting point, even for young kids.
Walk us through that.
Simple. When a kid gets money, birthday, allowance, whatever, it gets split 3 ways. 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings or giving.
But for a 7-year-old, isn't a Lego set a need?
In their mind, absolutely. And that's why you play the sorting game. The source describes literally sitting down with pictures of things. An apple. Need. A roof over your head. Need. The latest video game.
That goes in the want pile.
It sounds so simple, but you're actually teaching them to prioritize resources from day one.
And you're teaching delayed gratification. That is the superpower.
Hmm.
The book argues that the ability to resist the candy bar now for the video game later is maybe the single biggest predictor of financial success.
You're wiring their brain for long-term thinking.
You really are.
Okay, now, we have to touch on the controversial topic, allowance. To tie it to chores, or not to tie it to chores, the source presented a real debate here.
It's the classic citizen versus employee debate. One side says you have to tie allowance to chores. It teaches kids that money comes from work. If you don't scrub the toilet, you don't get paid.
Which makes sense. I don't get paid just for existing. True, but the counter-argument is that chores are just part of being a citizen of the household. You shouldn't be paid to wash your own dishes because, you live here and you make messes. If you pay for everything, you risk raising a kid who says, I don't need $5 this week, so I'm not taking out the trash.
Ooh, I have not thought of that. The mercenary kid.
Exactly. So the source suggests a hybrid approach. Expected chores like making your bed are just part of life, no pay. But extra jobs, like raking all the leaves or cleaning the garage, those can be commission-based.
That seems like a really healthy middle ground.
It teaches both responsibility and the value of labor.
The other big concept was debt. I think most of us were just taught debt is bad, full stop. But the book says that's way too simplistic.
It's all about the ROI, the return on investment. Good debt is borrowing money for something that increases your net worth or potential over time.
A mortgage or a student loan for a high-value degree?
Theoretically, yes. Bad debt is borrowing money to buy something that immediately loses value. Like putting a vacation on a credit card that's charging you 20% interest.
Right. And the source says to teach kids about interest rates early.
It does. It says if they want to borrow $20 from you to buy a toy, charge them interest.
Seriously, charge my own kid interest.
Just a little. If they have to pay you back $22 instead of $20, they learn a really valuable lesson that borrowing isn't free.
I love the section on entrepreneurship, too. It wasn't just go make money.
Yeah.
It actually redefined the word.
Yes. It defined an entrepreneur as someone who identifies a problem and creates a solution. That is so profound. It moves the whole focus from greed to value creation.
The lemonade stand example was great because it treated it like a real business plan.
A mini MBA. Who's your customer? Thirsty neighbors? People driving by? What's your product? Fresh squeezed or powder? It teaches them that money is just a byproduct of solving problems for people.
So we have the automated investment strategy for us. We have the needs versus wants and the solution-based mindset for the kids. And this is a big, but none of this works if you're a scatterbrained mess.
Correct. You cannot execute a detailed financial plan, and you certainly cannot be a patient, teaching parent if your mind is in total chaos. And this is where our third source, Stop Living for Others, comes in. It introduces the monkey mind.
I think I live with the monkey mind. Introduce them to us.
It's that restless, agitated chatterbox in your head. Did I lock the door? Why hasn't she texted back? I need to check the news. Ooh, look at that notification. It is a state of constant reactivity.
And the source links this directly to modern technology. It's not just that we're weak, it's that we're being hunted.
We are up against supercomputers designed to steal our attention. The source talks about FOMO, fear of missing out, not as a feeling, but as a manipulation tactic, and dopamine. Every little red notification badge is a tiny hit of chemical pleasure. We're addicted to these micro rewards.
We're basically lab rats hitting a lever.
We are. And the result is we lose the ability to do deep work or engage in deep thinking. We're just skimming the surface of life.
Enter monk mode. Now, I admit, when I first read that title, I thought, I am not shaving my head and moving to the mountains.
Thankfully, that is not required. Monk mode, in this context, is a strategic period of isolation from distraction. It is about creating boundaries so you can actually hear yourself think.
It's about reclaiming your attention span.
Yes. And it suggests a dopamine detox. Taking one day a week, maybe a Sunday, to just abstain from the addictive behaviors. No scrolling, no news, maybe even no junk food.
That sounds genuinely painful. Boredom is terrifying to modern people.
But boredom is where the magic happens. The source argues that when you reset your brain's reward system, you start to find satisfaction in slower, harder tasks, like reading a book or looking at your budget.
Or playing a board game with your kid without checking your phone every 3 minutes.
That is the key. You can't teach your kid to be focused and disciplined if you're checking emails during dinner. They mimic what we do, not what we say.
The source gave some tactical tools for this too, because just focus is, terrible advice.
Right. The Eisenhower matrix is a classic. You categorize tasks. Is it urgent? Is it important? Most of us live in the urgent but not important box, replying to emails, dealing with other people's drama. Monk mode is about carving out time for the important but not urgent.
Like financial planning.
Exactly. No one is screaming at you to check your ETF allocation. It isn't urgent, but it is vitally important for your future. If you don't block out the noise, you will never, ever get to it.
And that requires the power of no.
A huge theme in the book. Saying no isn't being rude. It's an act of self-respect. If you say yes to every social invitation, you are effectively saying no to your own goals.
And digital decluttering. I felt so attacked by this part. My desktop is a graveyard of screenshots.
Visual noise creates mental noise. Cleaning up your digital space is a legitimate form of monk mode.
So let's synthesize all this. We have the monkey mind, the lemonade stand, and the ETF basket. How do we weave these together into a single philosophy?
Well, just look at the cause and effect. What does the monkey mind do to your wallet?
It makes me panic sell.
Right. If you're reactive and emotional, you see a scary news headline and you sell your investments at the absolute bottom. Or you get bored, you scroll social media, you see an ad, and you buy something you don't need.
The monkey mind is draining my bank account.
It is. So strengthening the mind entering monk mode actually protects your wealth. Emotional regulation is a financial skill.
There was a brilliant connection between the books about automation. Stock Market Savings says automate your savings, and Stop Living for Others says eliminate decision fatigue.
They're talking about the exact same thing. Willpower is a limited resource. If you have to decide to save money every single month, eventually you will fail. The monkey mind will talk you out of it.
But if it's automated?
You bypass the monkey, you use your smart focused brain one time to set up the system, the automatic transfer, the robo-advisor, so your tired emotional brain can't mess it up later.
You're hacking your own psychology.
Yeah.
Now, how do we bring the family into this?
The Kids Finance Culture Source suggests the family finance meeting. And this is the ultimate test of all three skills.
A meeting about money with kids. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It doesn't have to be, but it requires monk mode. You have to turn off the TV, phones go in a basket, you eliminate the distractions, then you bring the adult knowledge, you're transparent about the budget, and you bring the kids' framework. You review their needs versus wants buckets or their lemonade stand plan.
So it's a focused, intentional space where the whole family gets on the same page.
It creates a culture. It shows kids that money isn't just a thing that creates stress, it's a thing you design. And you are modeling the behavior you want them to have.
That is powerful. It isn't just teaching compound interest. It is teaching how to have a serious, focused conversation in a totally distracted world.
Which might be the rarest skill of all these days.
So to wrap this all up, we started by saying these were three separate fires burning, but they aren't.
No, they are one fire, and the fire is intentionality. Wealth isn't just a number, it's the result of a system. Financial literacy isn't just a class, it is a culture you build at home. And focus. Focus is the foundation that makes the other two even possible.
The sources really drive home this idea that saving without investing is just losing slowly to inflation. And living without focus is just reacting to everyone else's noise.
That is the provocative thought I'd leave you with. The sources are asking a fundamental question. Are you actively designing your life, or are you just rowing upstream? Are you building a boat with an engine investing, compounding, focusing, or are you just paddling harder against a current you can't possibly beat?
Are you rowing or are you designing? That's the question.
And the beauty is you can switch strategies today. You don't need $1 million to start.
So for everyone listening, just pick one small action from this trifecta. Maybe it's a dopamine detox this Sunday to clear your head. Maybe it's finally opening that brokerage account and setting up a $50 auto transfer.
Or maybe it's just calling that family meeting and asking your kids, hey, what do you think a need is versus a want?
Just start. The compound effect applies to actions too. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.